Redmi Note 9 Pro Max vs Poco X2 detailed camera comparison. You guys have been asking for this one ever since I purchased the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max. Hey guys, it's Sagar from TechWorks, and in this video, let us take a deep dive and compare every aspect of the cameras on these two phones. I took over 400 image and video samples with these two phones, and out of those, we are going to take a look at around 85 of them in this video. So if you want a complete idea of where the cameras on each of these phones shine, make sure to watch the complete video. Most of you wanted me to compare these two phones because they come at somewhat similar price point, and from the outside, it looks like they might have a similar set of cameras, which can't be further from the truth. Both do get quad cameras on their back, and the main camera is also a 64 megapixel shooter on both, but the specifics are a bit different. To begin with the superficial things, the design of the camera module is different on both. Poco X2 gets its 4 cameras in a more traditional elongated cluster, while the Note 9 Pro Max takes a new square-like cluster approach. These camera modules stick out quite a bit on both of them. Poco X2 gets a dual LED flash, while the Note 9 Pro Max gets a single LED flash. Primary camera on both the phones get a 64 megapixel sensor, but Poco X2 uses Sony IMX686 sensor with f1.9 aperture and a 26mm lens, while the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max uses a Samsung ISOCELL GW1 sensor, and it also gets f1.9 aperture and a 26mm lens. Next, both of them have an 8 megapixel sensor with f2.2 aperture, and these cameras get a 13mm ultra wide angle lens. Another camera that both of them share is the 2 megapixel depth sensor with f2.4 aperture. Finally, Poco X2 gets another 2 megapixel sensor with f2.4 aperture, and this one gets a macro lens, while the macro camera on the Note 9 Pro Max gets a 5 megapixel sensor with f2.4 aperture. At the front, Note 9 Pro Max gets a 32 megapixel selfie camera with f2.25 aperture. Poco X2 gets 2 cameras at the front. Primary one gets a 20 megapixel sensor with f2.2 aperture and a 27mm lens. The next one gets a 2 megapixel depth sensor with f2.4 aperture. Interface of the camera app is mostly similar on both, with a few exceptions like how you access the macro mode. If you want a more detailed look at the camera interface of either of these phones, I suggest you check out their dedicated camera reviews on my channel. I will leave card to both those videos on the top right corner of the screen, and also leave links to them in the description section. Now before we head over to the image and video samples, if you are new to this channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button and the bell icon next to it. We make amazing videos on this channel, and hitting the bell icon will make sure that you don't miss out on any of them in the future. This time, let us start with the videos first. Both the phones can shoot 4K videos at 30 fps, but ones from the Poco X2 are electronically stabilized, while there is no stabilization in the 4K videos on the Note 9 Pro Max. The 4K videos from the Poco X2 are not as sharp as the ones from the Note 9 Pro Max. If I pause on one of these frames, you can see how sharp it is from the Note 9 Pro Max compared to the Poco X2. 1080p 30 fps videos look more natural and smooth from the Poco X2, while there seems to be a bit more sharpening applied by the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max. Basically, both of them capture similar videos at 1080p 30 fps, and which ones you like will depend on what your eyes and mind perceives to be natural. For slow motion videos, both can record 120 fps videos at 1080p resolution, and these videos turned out to be very good from both of them. They have no problem in setting and locking the focus and exposure while taking these videos. You also get the option to shoot 240 fps videos at 720p resolution on both the phones. On the Note 9 Pro Max, there is some bug, and even when you switch to the 240 fps mode, the videos are being recorded at just 120 fps. I didn't notice this in its dedicated camera review because I did not have any slow motion video from other phones to compare it with, but it is clearly visible when we compare its video with the ones from the Poco X2. I think this is a big issue, and Redmi needs to fix it via a software update very soon. After looking at these video samples, I am going to pick up the Poco X2 whenever I need to shoot videos. Now let us move on to the images, and we are going to start with the ones that I took in daytime. As you would expect, both these phones capture a lot of details with their primary camera. We already saw that both get a 48 megapixel primary sensor, but we still see some difference in these images. That is because these sensors are from different manufacturers, and the processor on both these phones are also different, so they process these images in a slightly different way. Images from the Poco X2 show warmer colors, while the ones from the Note 9 Pro Max show cooler color tones. Which one of these images will you like will completely depend on your color preference. Speaking of colors, ones in the images from the Poco X2 are slightly more saturated compared to the ones in the images from the Note 9 Pro Max. Poco X2 also captures a bit more contrast in its images, making the shadows appear slightly darker in comparison in all of its shots. This adds a bit more depth to its shots. But again, whether you like it or not will depend on your color preference. I prefer slightly natural looking colors in Note 9 Pro Max's images. Coming to the dynamic range. In this image, we see the Note 9 Pro Max do a better job. It is not only showing much more details in the highlights, which the Poco X2 completely missed out on, but it also brought up more details from the shadows, which you can see in this part. In this image, both have done a very good job. They brought up the shadows that we see enough details in the headphones, and the highlights of the background are also preserved very well. Again, both have done very well in this image. The only difference we see in these images is that the one from the Poco X2 is a bit warmer and the other one is a bit cooler. Now here is an interesting shot from both of these phones. I honestly don't know which one did a better job here, because we barely see any details in the light post and the bright sun in the background is completely blown out. I just think this shot looks interesting. Let me know in the comments which one according to you did a better job in this shot and why. In this shot, again the Note 9 Pro Max did better. We see better details and more colors in the leaves in its image compared to the Poco X2. All of these were 16 megapixel pixel bin images from the primary cameras of both these phones. Both of them also let you use the complete sensor to capture 64 megapixel images. Main advantage of these 64 megapixel images is that you can keep on zooming in as much as you want and the images still won't fall apart. For some reason, there is a distinctive green tint in the 64 megapixel images from the Poco X2. You don't notice it if you look at its images alone, but when you compare it with the ones from the Note 9 Pro Max, you cannot miss that tint. These 64 megapixel images obviously show more details than the 16 megapixel ones, but that is only in bright lighting conditions. And these images don't show as good of a dynamic range as the 16 megapixel ones do. 64 megapixel images are also huge in terms of file size, and the difference between these and the 16 megapixel ones is only seen if you zoom in 5 to 6 times. So I think it is best if you stick to the default 16 megapixel modes on both these phones for most of your shots. Here is a quick focusing speed test before we check out the close-up and macro shots. As you can see, both are quick at switching the focus from a near to far object and then back again. There is barely any difference, if any, between the focusing capabilities of these two phones. This is important while taking close-up shots like this. These shots look nice and crispy. The subject closest to the camera or the one that you tap on is in perfect sharp focus, and the background and the foreground is nicely blurred out. Both have large camera sensors and a wide aperture, which results in such amazing optical blur to the background in these close-up shots. Both these phones also do a great job with the dynamic range even while taking these close-up shots. You can switch to the macro lens and get even closer to your subject. While these images don't look incredible from either of these phones, ones from the Note 9 Pro Max still have more details and look slightly better since it has a 5 megapixel macro sensor as opposed to the 2 megapixel one on the Poco X2. We can zoom in and see that the images from the Note 9 Pro Max have more details and less noise in comparison, and the colors and the overall feel of these images is also better than the ones from the Poco X2. Macro camera is not the only extra camera that we get on these phones. Both also get wide cameras, and this is how much more of the scene these cameras let you get in the shot. Wide cameras are important because they let you show a different perspective of the scene, which you normally won't be able to do unless you walk far behind, and even then, those images might not look like this. It also lets you show the scale of things and let in more of the scene in the shot. These wide cameras and their lenses are not as good as the primary ones, so these images are not as sharp, and you might also notice a bit of distortion towards the edges. Colors and dynamic range wise, wide images from the Poco X2 are looking better in this comparison. Alright, now moving on to the portrait mode. Since this mode has got so much better, it is my favorite mode to shoot in on most of the new smartphones. Both of them add a bit of over-sharpening on the main subject in these shots. But other than that, these images turned out to be amazing. Edge detection is near perfect and identical on both. Actually, these images just look like two different images taken with the same camera. So like me, if you shoot a lot of images in the portrait mode, you can get either of these phones and the results will be similar. Both these phones also get the movie mode, where you can click portrait mode images in 21:9 aspect ratio with black bars at the top and bottom. This gives these images a very nice cinematic feel. Again, both are doing excellent job with the edge detection, and the images look almost identical as if they were shot with the same camera, which as you know is not the case, but it is nice to see Redmi and Poco match the performance of these cameras so well. Just like with portraits of humans, I love taking portraits of objects as well. Edge detection from both the phones is just as good while taking portraits of objects. No matter how complex the edges of the objects are or how busy the background is, they do an excellent job with these shots. While taking portraits of objects, colors look a bit better from the Poco X2, but the Note 9 Pro Max shows better dynamic range as you can see in this image. I thought this was going to be a very difficult shot, but both of them pulled it off like champs. Again, you can see the colors being slightly better in the shot from the Poco X2. Let us now move on to the images that I took in indoor, artificial and lower lighting conditions. This is where most of the smartphones struggle a lot, and the regular Note 9 Pro almost gave up in these conditions. But I am happy to tell you that both these phones are doing a very good job here as well. Images from the Poco X2 are a bit brighter, but then it also captures a lot of noise while bringing up the darker areas in these shots. None of these phones have optical image stabilization, but they have a big sensor and a wide aperture, and that helps these cameras capture more light so these images look good. As we zoom in, there is plenty of noise in both these shots, but the edges of the building seem to be sharper in the image from the Note 9 Pro Max, while the Poco X2 handles the exposure from the light in a better way. In this shot, as we zoom in, we see sharper edges in the image from the Poco X2, so their performance is a bit inconsistent in these lighting conditions. To help them take better images as the light goes down, both get a night mode. This mode definitely helps them take brighter images with better colors, and they also have more details in them. With the night mode turned on, Note 9 Pro Max captures a lot of noise, while the image processing algorithm on the Poco X2 makes sure that this noise, while still present, is kept to a minimum. Night mode images also handle the exposure from the lights in a much better way. While both these phones are doing a good job for their price in these lighting conditions, ones from the Poco X2 look more natural to my eyes. Honestly, the difference is not much, and you can't go wrong in choosing either one of these. Look at all these samples and try and figure out which one of these look more natural to you and go with that one. That brings us to the front-facing cameras. Poco X2 gets a 20 megapixel shooter, while the Note 9 Pro Max has a 32 megapixel selfie camera. While 32 megapixels sound like a lot of details, that is not very apparent in these images, at least not from the first look. You will have to zoom in to notice that selfies from the Note 9 Pro Max are showing sharper images with slightly more details. There is a bit more contrast in Poco X2's selfies, and I also prefer how the skin tones look in its images. Poco X2 gets a secondary depth sensor to help it with these portrait shots. I'm not too sure if this was absolutely necessary, as even without this sensor, Note 9 Pro Max is doing an equally good job of detecting the edges. Actually, I would say edge detection is better and more subtle in the portrait selfies from the Note 9 Pro Max. I think the depth sensor at the front of the Poco X2 is completely useless because they can achieve the same results with just one camera and software. If companies are adamant on using two cameras at the front, I think the second camera should at least have an ultra-wide angle lens to get more of the scene in one shot. Here's a video from the front-facing camera of the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max and the Poco X2. You can see how both these phones are handling the overall colors of the scene, exposure, and stabilization when I'm walking around with them. With that, you have seen over 85 image and video samples. And while for videos, I would easily pick up the Poco X2 over the Note 9 Pro Max, the choice is much more difficult when it comes to images. Normally, Samsung image sensors in budget smartphones are not as good as the ones from Sony, but with this comparison, we are seeing much closer results, and it is nice to see Samsung stepping up their game. Results are similar from both these phones in almost all lighting conditions, making it so much more difficult to pick one winner. I think this has got to be the closest competition that we have had on this channel so far. While I love every aspect of the cameras on the Poco X2, due to the better macro and selfie camera, I think the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max is going to be the winner for me. I said for me, because since the performance is so similar from both these phones, we can't pick an overall winner, and you will have to look at the kind of photos that you like to take and see which one of these is better at that. For me, I take a lot of portraits, and both of these are equally good at those. I don't take a lot of images in lower light, so although the Poco X2 is slightly better at that, it doesn't make a big difference to my needs. So I look at the macro camera, which I have started using more and more, and it is definitely better on the Note 9 Pro Max. And while I don't take a lot of selfies, I would like to have the ones that I take to be sharper. So again, the Note 9 Pro Max. This might be different for every one of you, so think about your photography style before you make your decision. In the end, both of them have a very good set of cameras and you can't go wrong when you choose either one of these. Let me know which one you end up choosing and the reason behind it, because this time more than ever before, I would really like to know why you picked the one that you did. And if you want to buy any of these phones, I will really appreciate if you got them from the affiliate links in the description section. That is it for this video, guys. Please hit the like button if this video helped you, and also subscribe to the channel for more quality tech videos like this. You can also check out some of the other videos from this channel. This has been Sagar, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.